Welcome to the fencing tool and miscellaneous component table. I'm going to go through quickly just some of the assorted tools that we've used to build the fence in a little bit closer detail. Some parts that we've used in the past that we thought would work and no longer do work, or just how we've built it from here in the past and how we're building things going in the future. Some basic tools you're going to need to cut wire is some pliers. They make some multi-purpose pliers that you can bend with, you can cut and crimp with. I find it much easier just to use a basic pair of wire cutters. They're lighter, they're easier to slip in your pocket. We saw the Gripple tools before and how they were used. Up close, there's just two holes on the back sides of these. The wire slips in, and once it goes in, it cannot come back out. And you can get your second wire and push it in the other way, and now you've got a locked fence. The tool clips onto there and tensions it. And again, we were talking about you can set the tension in some heavier fencing. If you're doing a high tensile system, you can set how tight you want the fence to be right in the tool, and it won't tighten any more than that. All the fencing we use is under 100 pounds of force, so it doesn't work enough for us. There is a unlock tool you can put into the end and squeeze it and then pull the wire back out, so they're always adjustable and always reusable. So you can adjust your fence whenever you want. Some of the initial ways we did and we still use to connect wires are with crimps. This is a crimp tool, very heavy and awkward to carry around. And these are crimps. They slide onto the wires similar to the Gripples do. You slide one end in and the other. And then you can, with your tool, make a permanent connection with that by crimping down on it. And that crimped it, and that would be a permanent connection. If I was actually building fence, I would crimp that down the whole way and not just a single crimp. For our hard panel fencing, where we have the exterior fences, these are just some scrap cutoff pieces, but when they connect on the outside of the fence, we do overlap them. This just made it a lot easier to build than to try to line the two up right at the edge and at a pole. And we overlap, we can connect the two together a few different ways. The most efficient way we found was with hog ring tools. This is a semi-automatic hog ring tool. So I've got one hog ring, line the two fence panels up, squeeze, and that's connected. We do a few of those at each overlap on the fence. And we make a solid but somewhat flexible connection for heat and expansion. Lots of different types of insulators we've used. Our favorite now is the lockjaw. They can snap onto a T-post in any orientation, so it doesn't matter that the posts are perfectly straight. Some of the other ones will only snap, most of the other ones will only snap on in the front position. And it's always difficult when the post actually isn't into the ground. Oh, and it's not going to go on for me. But most of them will only snap on to the front position, or occasionally some of them will snap onto the back position, but you can never snap them on in an offset angle. But there's lots of different types depending on your situation. You can use the plastic ones for the hard wire fencing that we use out there. You can use a drop pin style, so you can always remove the fence off of the pole. They make larger ones that work for webbing, so the webbing can run through. The webbing is good for horses. Most horse farms will use the webbing. Pigs work really good with the large webbing. This is also electrified. They do make smaller webbing that does the same. Some other insulators that we've done in the past are tube style insulators. These come in a variety of different shapes. You've got just your round tube insulator that They're cheap. They don't really hold up very well. They end up breaking and sliding. Your fin insulator has a bit more grip and it actually stays flat. It won't twist and turn when it's on the post. And they come in a few different lengths, or you can buy them in larger spools. When you're wrapping around a post, if you're using a wraparound insulator, these actually have a piece of metal on the inside. So it gives it a little bit more support when it wraps around the pole so it doesn't wear through. And these insulators are slip-on insulators that you can add on after the fact. So once you have a line pulled all the way through, you cannot get an insulator on. It has to be slid on. These are a spiral shape, so you can actually slide these on after the fact and you can put an insulator wherever you need to. We found that the tube insulators are easiest to install onto a post with galvanized rebar tie. They make all sorts of clips that are supposed to hold these on, but unless you get the exact clip that works with the exact tube insulator and your post is not, it has to be perfectly set. If it's not perfectly set, it's impossible to get those on. They slip off, they fall off. With the rebar tie, it doesn't have to be perfect. It wraps around. There's a tool. And again, this may not be the easiest because the post is not installed. But that wraps around. That's installed tight. It's adjustable. I can always cut it off. They come in rolls of 5,000 for about 60 bucks, so they're extremely cheap. For more of portable fencing, there's lots of different types of posts you can use. If we're doing any permanent fencing, we use a T-post. If we're doing semi-permanent fencing, we can use a round rebar post. And these also have special insulators that slide on and tighten up on them. They're also relatively cheap. So if you're doing like our winter paddock, we used a lot of these over the past years just to practice where we thought we might want fencing, where we might not. Fiberglass poles, there's lots of different types, lots of different lengths. We really like these that have, you can basically attach any type of wire, whether it's mesh webbing of assorted size, they'll go on the larger side, or poly wire, they can hook over or go in. They're just very, very useful. We also use these at every gate. The gate handles hook onto all of these, so we can open and close the gates themselves. They just snap right on and hold in place when we're not using the gates. There's also the cheaper black plastic Stepin Posts. As you can see, these are already snapped in a few places. They last for about a year. They end up warping and bending. They're just not very good. They're good. They're better than nothing, but they're not the best posts. Some other miscellaneous things. Some of the fencing, the mesh net fencing that we use, they get holes, they get damaged. They sell repair kits for them. They're fairly easy to use. You get a lot of repairs for just a few bucks. You can make your nets last forever with these types of kits. Spools. We've got lots of different types of spools. Some of the webbing that we don't use very often, we just keep on the initial spool that they came on. It can be spooled out and rolled back up. It's not as convenient as a geared spool or non-geared spool, so we keep some of our metal wire fencing on some of these and some of the poly wire fencing on the geared spools. There's a lot of advantages over the spools versus the the geared spool versus the non-geared spools at all, or the hand manual spools. This is a lot faster, it's a lot more convenient, but they can bird nest out very quickly and become a mess. So something you want to practice with, play around with before just going out and filling up the spool maximum you can and working with it. You do want to practice it with it out in the field first. Some other miscellaneous components. There's brackets to hold these spools onto T-posts. So if you run a spool across the fence, or across your field, You can install these brackets onto your T-posts. That'll basically support that. And then you can hook your spool onto the T-posts. Good to keep the spools up off the ground. Again, they should be electrified. So it will be carrying current, and you don't want it to ground out in the ground. Again, the remote is great here. The remote works with all of these different types of wire. It works with our metal wire. It works with the webbing. It works with the poly wire. It works with the stainless wire that we use in some places. This goes back to the energizers, where it actually communicates through the wire itself. And it's an indispensable tool, again, to have on the farm. Extremely useful for repairs and just general in and out of fencing. I think that's about it on the tools I have. And yeah.